Hi, my name is Bethany Chaplin. I'm a Minnesota Green Corps member serving with Crow Wing Soil and Water Conservation District, and today I'll be giving a presentation called What is a Watershed? So some overview. A watershed is an area of land that drains water into a specific water body. A water body is any river, lake, stream, ocean, pond, or basin. Watersheds come in all shapes and sizes. They can be as small as a footprint or large enough to encompass multiple states. Everyone lives in a watershed and most are interconnected, eventually draining to bays or oceans. So this illustration here shows a watershed. So the high points of elevation divide watersheds. So that's going to be our black circles in the background. And then all that water we can see is flowing to the lake or river in the beginning of our diagram. And then there's different types of land use on our landscape. So we have some farm and agriculture land, we have a city, and then we have some suburban housing. We have wetlands, lakes and rivers. So you live in the Pine River Watershed. So Minnesota has over 80 watersheds, and the Pine River Watershed contains parts of Aiken, Cass, Crow Wing, and Hubbard counties. Pine River and Cross Lake are the major cities in this watershed, and the Pine River Watershed encompasses approximately 500,000 acres, 341 total river miles, and 523 lakes. 41% of the land is publicly owned or held by tribal landowners. 45% of the area is forested, and 25% of that area is wetlands. So what happens when it rains? When rain falls on the ground, it can soak into or infiltrate the ground. Groundwater remains in the soil where it will eventually seep into the nearest stream, lake, or river. During periods of heavy rainfall and snowfall, water may run onto and off of impervious surfaces such as parking lots, roads, buildings, and other structures. These surfaces act as fast lanes that transport water directly to storm drains. The excess water volume can quickly overwhelm storm drains, streams, rivers, and lakes, causing them to overflow and possibly result in floods. And as that water flows, it often picks up pollutants. So this diagram shows different types of land use. So we have natural ground cover, and that has about 10% runoff from those precipitation events. And then as we increase our land use to 75 to 100% impervious surface, we see that the runoff increases to around 55%. So there's different types of pollution. So point source pollution is defined by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency as any single identifiable source of pollution from which pollutants are discharged. Examples of point sources include discharge from wastewater treatment plants and operational waste from industries. State and federal requirements regulate those point sources, and you need to apply for a permit to discharge. Non-point source pollution does not come from a specific source. Instead, it originates from many places or from a widespread area. Examples of non-point source pollution include the following: sediments from construction, forestry operations, and agricultural lands, bacteria and microorganisms from failing septic systems and pet wastes, nutrients from fertilizer and yard debris, and pesticides from agricultural areas, golf courses, athletic fields, and residential yards. Oil, grease, antifreeze, and metals washed from roads, parking lots, and driveways. And these pollutants are transported to local waterways via storm drains. And this stormwater is not cleaned or treated before it reaches rivers, lakes, and streams that connect to our groundwater reservoirs. So what can you do to prevent pollution in our watershed? So a few things you can do is to don't pour oil or chemicals down storm drains, because that's going to lead right to our waterways. To pick up and throw away pet waste, to limit the use of fertilizer and pesticides in your yards, to rake up leaves in the fall, and to use less salt on the driveways and sidewalks in the winter, and then to pick up litter in your community. So who helps manage watersheds? So many cities and counties are involved in managing stormwater, and there are also a variety of special purpose units of local government who are able to work across city and county boundaries. Some special purpose units of local government include watershed management organizations, watershed districts, and soil and water conservation districts. So at the bottom of our slide, I have some links where you can find your local soil and water conservation district or your watershed management district. And here we have an on your own activity. So you'll need 2 pieces of white paper, some tape, and some markers, and a spray bottle filled with water. I have listed out the instructions for the activity here. And then we have some questions that we want to think about before we spray the paper with water. So what direction might the water flow and why? And then some wrap up questions at the end of the activity. And I also have included an activity tutorial link where I walk through the activity. And then next we have an Enviroscape walkthrough. So this is a 3D model that is supposed to mimic a watershed like the one you live in. So it has different types of land use. As we can see, there's some farm and some housing and some different industries. So you can put different types of pollution on this watershed model to see where it might end up. So click on that link to watch that video as well. So some resources for you all. So I have some links to more information on what a watershed is. And then I have how you can protect water quality from agricultural and urban runoff. And the EPA has a citizen's guide to understanding stormwater that's really helpful. And then some volunteer things you can do. The Pine River Watershed Alliance is a citizen-led volunteer organization that works with local units of government and other agencies to preserve and protect local environment while meeting the resident needs for economic development and a healthy community. And then the Adopt a Drain program asks volunteers to volunteer 15 minutes twice a month for cleaner waterways and healthier communities. Adopt a Drain asks residents to adopt a storm drain in their neighborhood and keep it clear of trash, leaves, and other debris to reduce pollution. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you guys so much for listening, and reach out to me if you have any questions, and good luck with the rest of your school year.